I'd like to call the meeting of the City of Bonita Springs Planning and Zoning Board to order. Um, This time, I'd like to have Bob Lombardo lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flags and
Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mike, would you please do the roll call?
Dr. Hershenson.
Present.
Mr. Lohan.
Here.
Mr. Townsend.
Here.
Mr. Lombardo.
Here.
Mr. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Doogie.
Here.
And Member Waterhouse is absent today and she is excused. And we have a quorum.
Okay, I want to just start off at the beginning to indicate the fact that public comment will be allowed at each presentation of a case. So that we have to hold that until that particular time. So 2 cases today, and please hold your comments. You will have an opportunity for public comment following the presentations of the respective cases. The first case we have is the planning period comprehensive plan amendments that have been proposed and which the committee has looked at for today's meeting. So we have a presentation, and it will start off with the Director of Planning, Jackie Jensen. Go ahead, Jackie.
Good morning, Jacqueline Gensen with Community Development, Planning and Zoning Manager. Good morning, it's great to see you all. So I'm just going to do a brief introduction. I do have Dr. Banyan, she's joining us via Zoom. She will lead primarily the presentation, and just for a quick overview why we're here. When the city did its last evaluation and appraisal review in 2023, we did do some amendments, sent those up to the state, and the state came back with a comment about updating the plan based on some changes in legislation. And Dr. Banyan will go into more detail about that. The council was aware at the time of those changes. We then brought that discussion item back up to council last year, and they gave us direction to go ahead and pursue these amendments. So without further ado, I'll let Dr. Banyan continue with the presentation, and we'll be here for questions. All right, Dr. Banyan, we're ready.
Yes, good morning. It's good to see everyone again. I was here for your training maybe a week ago now, and enjoyed the questions and the engagement. So we can move on to the next slide. Jackie will be driving the slides for me this morning. So I recognize that some members of the board are relatively new to some of the comprehensive planning processes. So I want to just give a brief overview of the comprehensive plan and what it is. So when we think about the comprehensive plan, that's really the longer term vision for the city. And so that really supports what the city intends to be farther into the future than maybe some shorter term plans. So it has long range policies, programs, and public investments. Comprehensive plan is fairly long and it's organized into elements, as you may already know. And it does several things, but one of those things is that it guides the physical development of the city. And you'll also see that the policies are expressed through goals, objectives, and policies. Sometimes you'll see people refer to them as GOPs, but that's what those are: bigger goals, bigger objectives, and then several sets of policies. You can see the full comprehensive plan. It's housed online at a site called MuniCode. And if you click one more, Jackie, I'll just give you a screenshot of what MuniCode looks like. And on that site, the comprehensive plan is updated, and every time there's an amendment that goes through, that gets reflected online. So it's a good resource. You can also look back and see what has occurred in the past with different versions. So next slide. I just want to talk just briefly about how the comprehensive plan is related to other planning tools. So if you think about the comprehensive plan as kind of this broad long-term intent of the city, almost the foundation in many ways of the planning documents. And then we move to the Land Development Code. And in the Land Development Code, you'll see more specifics and more specific development regulations. Those always should be consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then shorter term plans may be reflected in the strategic plan, in funding availability, and other priorities that the city may undertake at a sort of a shorter limited window. Next slide. So I do want to talk a little bit more about what Jackie had referred to, which is the EAR process, evaluation and appraisal review. I just want to reflect the 2023 cycle right now so you get an idea about how the EAR proceeds. So every 7 years, cities and counties have to take a look at their comprehensive plan by state legislation. And the last cycle that the city was on was looking at the 2017 to 2022 time period. So it's a 7-year review in a 7-year time period. And the purpose of the EAR, there's many purposes, but the main purpose for the state is to ensure that the city's comprehensive plan is consistent with state statute. So there's a section in the EAR that goes through an analysis. We call it Appendix B or Appendix A, and it compares the city's plan to the state statute. So we completed that process in 2023. And again, we were only looking at legislation up until 2022. So then after we complete the year 2023, the city has 1 year to complete its amendments. We call those year-based amendments. And those primarily get focused on what did the year identify in terms of changes needed to the comprehensive plan to be consistent with state statute. And so those amendments went up to the state in 2024. The state did comment on those amendments and wanted us to also include legislation that happened post-year, which was in July 2023. And I will talk a little bit about what that is in the next few slides. So I know I have a lot of timelines going on here, but this should be a little bit more clear in terms of how the EAR and the amendments cycle through. So May 2022, we start the research for the EAR. The report gets completed in 2023. Amendments started in 2023, and then the adoption for the year-based amendments was in 2024. Next slide. So the state comment, again, referring back to the amendments, the state asked the city to address new legislation that took effect on July 1, 2023, after the EAR was completed. And specifically, the state wanted the city to update its planning horizons. So the planning horizon in the new legislation required that local governments increase that horizon from a 5 and 10 year planning period to a 10 and 20 year planning period. The city was slightly off in terms of its future land use map and some other maps. So the data analysis needed to be conducted in order to ensure that the city was going to be consistent with that new period before we changed the maps. Okay, next slide. At the same time, when we began the process for doing the analysis for the updated amendments, the state passed additional legislation. You may have run across this so far. This is Senate Bill 180. And Senate Bill 180 required that for 1 year after a hurricane, local governments cannot pass any more restrictive or burdensome new laws about building, zoning, or land use, which also included the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So the scope of our analysis was twofold. We needed to conduct the data analysis to support the increase in the required planning period. What that meant is that we needed to update the demographics from the EAR, and we also needed to ensure that there was available land capacity to accommodate the future population. So again, when we move the planning horizon, we all have to make sure we're consistent with this portion of state law that requires a sufficient land in the city to accommodate a future population. So we also, oops, yeah, thank you. So those plan amendments needed to reflect the planning horizon. And at the same time, we also needed to be sure that we were still in compliance with Senate Bill 180 to make sure that we weren't doing anything that was going to be more burdensome. Okay, now we can move on. So you have in your packet the comprehensive plan amendments. You also have in-depth data and analysis that demonstrates the sufficient land capacity to accommodate a population to 2050. So those estimates, there's two portions of the population that we look at. The estimates about what is the population now and what is the projection for the population up until 2050. Both of those estimates are lower than what we had anticipated in the 2023 year. So meaning that the city isn't growing quite as quickly as we had anticipated in 2023. We've done some in-depth analysis of that and also compared this to kind of two different sources for projections. And our estimates are and projections are pretty conservative, meaning that we took the higher population to be sure that there was sufficient land capacity up until 2050. So the new maps, what they do is they reflect the current future land use and future land use categories in the city. It also reflects the new updated boundaries for the city. So you'll see the recently adopted amendments from Ravenna Lakes, and that was also updated. So the new boundaries are reflected. We did not make any changes to any other future land use category as part of this process. So nothing has changed, and so the assurance that we're not violating anything with Senate Bill 180 is there. And we also, so we updated the future land use map that you see in the foreground, and then in the background, the long range transportation plan. What's been updated there is the new city boundaries. No other changes have been made. And you will see in your packet the text amendments, and there's very few text amendments. It's just reflecting the new updated horizon. And we knew going in that the bulk of the work for this process was going to be in the data and analysis because just assuring that the future land use categories as reflected in the comprehensive plan were still going to be sufficient. So you don't see a good many text amendments just because, again, sort of there's relatively few places where that planning horizon is referenced. Okay, I think next slide. So I just want to share what's next. So we're here before you seeking your feedback and comments and questions. We will have a public meeting on March 31st, and we will be presenting these to City Council April 1st. Then it will go to the state, and the state will have a month to look at the amendments, look at the changes. And then if all goes well, we'll be at City Council for adoption sometime around June. So that's a estimate. Both of those are estimated timeframes, the last two, how long it takes the state to get back, as well as the City Council adoption when that is scheduled. Okay, next slide. Okay, I think we can maybe stop sharing, but that's really open to your questions, discussion, any comments or recommendations.
At this point, excuse me, I neglected to have our clerk read the official title of this case. So would you do that now, Mike, please?
Oh, be happy to. So as Dr. Banyan stated, amendments to the comprehensive plan to address the 2023 Florida Department of Commerce technical assistance comments relative to changes in the required planning periods.
Okay, members, are there any questions of Dr. Banyan with respect to her presentation and what we read over the last couple of days? Any comments? Okay. At this point, let's see. I guess at this point, there's no, are we ready then for a motion, or
Would you like to see if there's public comment, Mr. Hirsch?
the public comment, yes. Does anybody have any public comment on what has been presented thus far? Okay, seeing none, I would like to attempt the motion. So I'd like to move the following. Good luck, Ben. All right, I had my notes somewhere, Lord knows where I put them. But anyway, the case name, again, is just, Micah just said, is the Planning Period Comprehensive Plan Amendments. The proposed amendments are in concert with the City of Bonita Springs comprehensive plan, which have to address the 2023 Florida Department of Commerce technical assistance comments relative to changes in the required planning periods, CPA 26-130023-BOS. I move approval of these amendments.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lombardo. Any discussion on this at all by any board members? Seeing none, clerk, please call it oral.
Member Townsend,
Yes.
Member Lohan,
Yes.
Member Doogie,
Yes.
Chairman Hershenson,
Yes.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Lombardo.
Yes.
The motion carries 6-0.
Thank you for your time.
That was easy,
There you
thank
go.
you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you, Dr. Banyan.
Thank you.
The next case,
So that takes us to item 6A, and I'll read the title. Case name Hunters Ridge Plan Development Amendments. This is an amendment to a residential plan development, RPD, to amend the schedule of uses to allow a 149-foot monopole, wireless facility, and related infrastructure. And because this is a quasi-judicial matter, I will swear in, administer the oath to all those who intend to speak today, including staff and public comment. So all those intending to speak, please rise and raise your right hand, as well as public comment. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Mike Fegon with Community Development for the record. With this being the first meeting of this board of this type, I will go ahead and just kind of give you a brief overview of how this is going to work. Usually staff gets up and does a quick introduction of the case, sort of the back of the box recap, if you will. And then since it is the applicant's burden to demonstrate compliance, we turn it over to the applicant to start the presentation process, after which you can either take questions from the applicant or proceed forward with staff presentations followed by public comment. So this is a case that started last fall in 2025 with regards to a cell tower request for the Hunters Ridge residential plan development. It is being proposed on a portion of the property that is relatively, we'll call it center east, if you will, of the Hunters Ridge development. So it's about halfway through the entire development along the eastern boundary near Bonita Grand Drive. Currently, the property is used more as a maintenance facility and a treatment area for the golf course and for the community at large. And they are proposing to lease a portion of the property to Diamond Communications, LLC, for the construction of a cell tower. The reason why this is before you is because, similar to what we discussed in your training session, with these plan developments, there are schedules of uses that go along with each development. So there's development parameters and a list of allowable uses. And currently, cell tower uses aren't on that schedule. So the way that they can apply to get it on the schedule is to request to amend said schedule and add it. So that is the purpose of the request. I'm going to turn it over to Mataniah John, who's going to represent Diamond Communications LLC with the applicant presentation, and then staff will back clean up if you have any questions. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mataniah John, 935 Main Street, Suite C4, Safety Harbor, Florida 34695. I have taken an oath. I come before you today with staff recommendation of approval for a planned development amendment to construct a 149-foot tall monopole style communication tower with monopine tree camouflaging techniques applied to it. That's a mouthful, so I'm going to refer to it as a monopine moving forwards as I go through my application. This is on strap 06482603 0010G 01CE. And as you heard, that's the maintenance facility for the Hunters Ridge Golf Course, and it also has water treatment tanks on it, water storage tanks on it. In all maps I show you today, up will be north. So first of all, this is located in RPD zoning. And this means that this is a planned development with a variety of uses in it. We are on a non-residentially programmed portion of the PD. It is located in the southeast corner of the property, and I'll get to that in my aerials. And to the south, you'll notice that there's woodlands, and also to the east is Bonita Grand Drive. The future land use designation is mixed-use PD. All right, so I'm now showing you a property appraiser aerial. You can see the parent parcel highlighted in that light blue color. As you can see, there's not a whole lot of options for going around and placing the tower on alternate sites. And I'll be getting into the need for it to be in this area later. This is what I essentially call urban infill. An engineer would call it densification. It's the same concept of when you build out land, you have to add feeder roads and such to support it. This is the same type of deal from a wireless infrastructure standpoint. So I've applied an arrow, and you can see that it's located in that southeast corner of the parcel. So to the north, as I get in closer here, you've got a better view of the compound. To the north, of course, is the maintenance compound. Then you have the Hunters Ridge Golf Course. Let me see if I can make the mouse show up here. And then you move up to Fox Ridge Drive. To the south, you have wooded lands with a water retention pond. To the east, you have a perimeter buffer for Bonita Grand, or for Hunters Ridge. Then you have the Bonita Grand right-of-way. Then you have a perimeter buffer for Quail West. Then you get to Lakai Drive, and then off to the houses within Quail West. To the west, you have the rest of the maintenance compound, and of course a retention pond, then a bit of golf course, and then you move on to houses along Hunters Ridge Drive. This parcel is owned by the Community Association, and this is just a closer view. We are proposed on a portion of the property that is already disturbed, so we're not removing any trees or digging up any wetlands or anything like that. And as you can see, the effort is to try to place it try to balance it into the corner of this area and leverage the wooded lands to the south and leverage the leverage our landscape buffers. This is an example of a monopine style communication tower. And basically, it has a single support pole. All cabling's contained within that support pole. That's like a trunk. And then there's a canopy of foliated branches that are built onto that. It's engineered from the factory that way to support that and be rated for the wind load. Antennas are located at the top on external head frames. Those head frames are basically nestled within the extent of the canopy, so they don't extend out past it. The antennas themselves are covered with foliated stalks to match the branches. This is sheet CA from your plans on file, and this just shows the elevation sheet. I also have photo simulations, but the general idea is that the canopy on the monopine starts at 55 foot, basically the height of mature oak trees around the tower. Then it proceeds up, and you can see the antennas are nestled in here. You can see that this monopine is designed for up to 4 carriers. Your code encourages sharing communication towers, so that way you reduce the need for multiple towers. And this avoids things like what you see up at Atlanta, where you would have multiple towers on the same piece of property, creating what is called a tower farm. This monopine will actually be co-located by 2 carriers straight off the bat. That's an unusual thing, but it speaks to the need, and I'll be presenting their maps later. T-Mobile will be the primary anchor, so they were first on board, and they're the ones with the greatest need. They're located at the top, and then immediately underneath that will be Verizon Wireless. I've applied arrows just to show the co-locations, the co-location spaces. The purple arrow is for T-Mobile, red is for Verizon. This is sheet C1.1. It shows the site plan line work that is in your file, and it shows the location of the monopine. And you can see the monopine is the circle right here in this lower right-hand corner. All right. This is sheet C2. This is the equipment compound for the monopole. And this just shows that the monopine is designed to be shared. So there's space above and there's space below. That equipment compound is just a fenced area that'll have slabs in there and traffic cabinet sized control cabinets with computers in them. Running through my photo simulations. So you have Bonita Grand Drive looking southwest. Then you have Lakai Drive looking west. And as you can see, because you have those intervening buffers, it makes it hard to see the monopine. Hunters Ridge Drive looking northeast. And I can go back to the spotted map. This is towards the south. As we go into Hunters Ridge, you'll see that the majority of the visibility is there, which, you know, to a degree makes sense, right? They're the landlord organization. But your monopine is hanging out right where my mouse is, and you can see at this distance the monopine blends into your canopy in the background. Hunters Ridge Drive looking east. You can see the monopine right here. So at this distance, your bulk and scale is down in the range of what you see in your midground. So palms and trees and such. Not talking about this guy right in front of us, talking about stuff that, you know, is on the other side of the road. But this does help give a little bit of perspective for estimating views in the backyard, because in the backyard, your trees are going to be much closer and your view shed will be much smaller. Fox Ridge Drive, so this is the closest houses to the north. looking southeast. Again, you can see the monopine. There is visibility. I don't have the Romulan cloaking device, but as you can see, it makes it look as if it is an extension of the tree canopy in the area. Pond View Circle looking northwest, and you can see there's no visibility here. Silverthorn Court looking northeast, no visibility. Hunter's Court looking northeast, and you can see the monopine does stick up here, and it's within scale of your surrounding canopy. Again, discounting this tree in the foreground, looking at stuff that's in the background. So going into the T-Mobile RF package that is on file, basically as we move along and we continue to change the use of cell phones, right? Because when they first came out, and I usually use my father as an example for this, he used to use a cell phone instead of using payphones to call my mother, right? So, you know, he was a radio salesman in Sarasota County, and if the Ringling Bridge was stuck in the up position, he could use his cell phone to call my mom and say he's not going to be home for dinner. As we got along, those moved into more places, and now we use cell phones and communication devices to replace our hard phone line, to take and access our local government, to access our businesses. Even this laptop I have in my purse over here is a cell phone these days. And what that means is that the demands, just from the way people use the network now as opposed to before, they have to provide coverage in areas that previously did not have as robust a service. Areas where you might be able to see it from, you might be able to get service from maybe out in your yard at best. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I thought you had a question. Green is, so just to go through this map, green is reliable coverage. Red is poor coverage. That's where you're having trouble connecting outdoors. Blue is remnant coverage. And then yellow is where you have a solid connection outside, but once you start going inside buildings, it drops off. One of the things, you can see I-75 off to my west. You can see Bonita Beach Drive just to my north. Of course, our Collier County line is this dotted line that hangs out right here. And then as you go along, of course, you have Hunter's Ridge, you have Quail West surrounding it, you have Palmyra and Worthington hanging out, just to help give some bearings. But when you look at all these black dots on here, these are all existing towers that T-Mobile's co-located on. And basically the way that this works is it's just like the lights that are in the room over your head. You know, right now you have, 12 lights over your dais? And they're spread out evenly in order to have enough light for you to be able to read and work at the dais. If you start removing those lights, you get dark spots. Communication towers are inherently that way.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
And that is, you mentioned several times, quote, the closest house. What particular house structure is the closest, will be the closest to the tower? Is there an address or something along that idea?
The closest house is located 233 feet to the east off of Lakai. I do not have an address for that, but my parcel number, my strap number is 054826B 4015000340.
That was 1 or 233?
233 feet. And that is the equivalent of 1.5 times the tower height away, sir.
All right, thank you.
And one addition, the pictures you're showing with the tower there, those are simulations, or?
Correct.
I want to make sure it wasn't already there.
No, sir. And those simulations are based off of balloon tests and then trigonometry, essentially. So anyways, as I was saying, all communication towers are inherently local. This is the reason that I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be taking anybody's time in this room, is the need to serve people. Verizon Wireless is also planning to co-locate on this communication tower, and this shows just how bad the signal is in the area. Usually you only have one anchor tenant who's willing to essentially walk hand in hand with the communication tower developer through the process. Because the way this works is if your network is bad enough, you basically the devices are providing metrics, people are complaining. The carrier comes to a communication tower developer like Diamond Communications and says, I need a tower that can hold these antennas at this height in this general area. And then they go search. And that is, when you're building a new tower, that is the last resort, because the first resort is to try to reconfigure your existing towers. After that is to try to co-locate on a tall structure or an existing tower that you're currently not on, because that's just a building permit. That's 4 to 6 weeks, and then you're answering your customer's complaint. You're taking care of your customers. This process, as you heard, just from the time it's been in zoning, has been since last fall. That doesn't include all the homework that went in beforehand. This process has been going on for the better part of 2 years. And what that underscores here is usually after the tower's built, then your second carrier comes along and says, oh, there's a tower here. I can fix my situation easily with whatever my signal's going on and co-locate. Except here the need is so pressing that both T-Mobile and Verizon have joined. Verizon's maps are a little bit different, and you can see that the signal that they're licensed spreads a little further than T-Mobile's. That's just the nature of the physics. Again, you can see Bonita Beach Drive to my north, or Bonita Beach Road, forgive me. The Collier County line is to my south, I-75, just to help give references. All of these markings, these are all the existing towers in the area. And if you notice, those are all the same locations as T-Mobile's on. They're both co-located on all the towers in the area. And you'll also notice with this map, just like with the T-Mobile map, they just can't reach Hunter's Ridge area. All right. So just going into my housekeeping, we've held 2 community meetings, one on August the 14th, 2025, and then one again on February the 5th, 2026. Whenever you have a large group of people, it is impossible to make everyone happy, but both of those community meetings were overwhelmingly supportive. Also, I would like to take and bring your attention to 911 call statistics. So in Collier County, and this is older data, it's 2021, it shows that 83% of all 911 calls received by the Collier County Sheriff's Office came from wireless numbers. That's before you take into account things like the mobile computer units that are in these ambulances and first responder vehicles that have to be able to connect to cellular networks as well. And that just shows how much we rely on the cellular network as our infrastructure, as our way to communicate, both during the normal year instead of the copper phone line, and then whenever we have situations where the power is out and you still need to be able to connect to the outside world. Of course, I could ramble on about how you use that to connect to everything from, maybe sending a video call to family to being able to connect to the property appraiser and pay your taxes or whatnot. But
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Regarding, you talk about the use of cell phones for emergencies. I had a personal experience. I'm in the probably the section of Bonita Springs. It's fairly close to actually North Naples. And the calls sometimes will go from, again, the area that I'm in, and I'm wondering about Hunter's Ridge. Say, for example, there is an individual who has all of their medical facilities in Lee County. So now the call goes into Collier County. So therefore, the emergency vehicles, first responders, are going to be coming from Collier County. I don't mean to get you off on a tangent or a different subject matter, but that becomes a problem in the area overall as to what emergency site picks up the call. I was just wondering if you have any comments about that, maybe on a futuristic sort of, because it's something that people are complaining about a lot, at least in my area.
Absolutely. So, just as you were alluding to, with 911 calls, they get routed to the nearest tower, and based on that, all communication towers are part of the Florida E911 system. And that's a system that essentially turns your communication device, your cell phone, into an emergency beacon. But precious time gets lost when you connect and you are sent to the wrong dispatch unit, and they start to dispatch in the wrong area, and then they have to shuffle you back over. And then when you have weak signal, it's harder to establish that beacon connection too, so that way they know exactly where you are. And then even in areas where I was showing that red coverage and that blue coverage where you practically don't have signal inside your house, what happens if you get injured inside your house, right? And you don't have signal. You have to get outside your house just to make the call. So I hope I have not rambled a little too much there, or at least given you a $5
Statement, I guess,
answer.
of what reality is. So.
Yes, sir.
And another issue, and people have concerns being close to a tower, radio frequencies, et cetera. Can you just talk a few minutes on that as to what your knowledge is and what your company or the firm you represent have as a response to those questions?
Absolutely. So communication towers, your cellular network, that's FM radio. And it's also, you may have heard of 5G. That's the old television signal. When all the television stations converted from analog to digital, that section of the radio spectrum was reallocated. Cell phones are basically FM radio walkie-talkies with a computer strapped to them. So this is not some type of new radio wave that we haven't been around. This is stuff that's been around since the days of Tesla and Marconi. These communication towers operate at just a fraction of the FCC's safety levels. And when you look at that, they have continued along. In 2020, they reevaluated their safety levels and reaffirmed them. The FCC also now reaches out and cross-references its citations with the World Health Organization. Also, the other thing to keep in mind is that the FCC monitors these all the carriers. If you were to go off of your allocated signals, or if you were to broadcast outside of what you're allowed to do as far as energy-wise, the FCC will come and punish your license essentially, and could ultimately take it. And as a result, that means that the carriers are regularly policing their networks and going through and monitoring them. So, yes, sir.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the aesthetics, which I'm sure a lot of the neighborhoods are concerned about, and you've done a good job of explaining how the Pine Tower would blend in with the existing canopy, depending on how you're looking at it. I noticed that there was two pictures next to each other. One had a Home Depot building with a tower, and then there was one with a home with a tower. And the Home Depot tower had much more natural looking and lush vegetation, if you will, or branches. And the other one looked kind of like artificial.
Yes, sir.
I would expect that you would listen to the community and show them different variations, perhaps, because if the tower's going to be in their community, and for it to, I think the aesthetics is probably number one or number two on people's minds, and I think that's important. I think you ought to pay attention to that. The second thing is going to be fencing around. What is that fencing going to be constructed with? What type of fencing?
Yes, sir. So first thing with the aesthetics of the monopine itself and its branches, the reason that it is a monopine comes from consultation with the Hunters Ridge Community Association. Since they are our landlord, this had to go through a vetting process with the community association. They continue to have input, and they continue to have input on what that branch density is going to be like, what that foliage is going to be like. The base of the monopine itself, and of course you have your photo simulations, those are representative of what is proposed. The base of the monopine itself is to be enclosed by a chain link fence that is within the actual maintenance compound of the golf course. So the only people who can see that are going to be the people who are working in the maintenance compound.
So it's not visible, people taking walks, et cetera, it's not?
No, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question, a couple questions. The 150 feet strikes me as pretty tall. The mature trees are, 55 feet, as you mentioned. Has there been any testing to see that a lower tower wouldn't get the job done? That would be one. Yeah, so I had a couple, but.
So when these sites are modeled, the modeling that happens, they do look at different heights. Forgive me. The problem that you have here is basically all the trees that break up the view shed. When you look at this, your coverage, right? It's not even, it's not like the super tall towers that are 250 feet or whatnot, where they can reach out 3 to 5 miles. Here you have coverage that doesn't even all the way make it down to give you your green indoor coverage down at the south end of Hunters Ridge. And that's because you have your, that's basically because what happens is trees on the, objects on the property, right, cause reflection. They scatter, and they scatter the signal. If I were to show you coverage over the water, you would see a nice round line. So just to be able to get the coverage that I am showing you here today, it has to be with the antenna line at 140 feet. And then, of course, you go up to 145 to top a tower, an additional 4 feet for a lightning rod that extends past there. So just to get this, you need that height to get above the trees.
And then the other question I had is, I think I understand that monopines have sort of an issue with fading and long-term maintenance issues from an aesthetic standpoint. Is there any sort of plan or responsibility on the part of the applicant to take care of those within a certain time frame if there's damage, fading, etc.?
Absolutely. So monopines have a renewal schedule, essentially. with operators like Diamond. If you needed that included in the zoning approval as a condition of approval, we wouldn't have an issue with that. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
It's kind of ironic that there isn't an option that Jack is referring to, and that is that the appearance is like a Norfolk pine, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the Norfolk pine is now an invasive. But anyway, just not for this project, obviously, but really should be giving some ideas or thoughts towards something that looks something that's an acceptable plant in the Southwest Florida area. And Norfolk pines are just kind of ugly, actually. That's just my opinion.
Understood, sir. It's an ongoing challenge from an engineering perspective.
Yes,
There
it
are
is, of
broadleaf
course, I
designs
understand
out there. Yes, sir.
For the Verizon, I know they used to, I'm sure they still do, have a way for emergency, for first responders. Will that assist in this?
Yes, sir. Every cellular provider is required to participate in the Florida E911 system. And that is a system that when your phone connects to the tower, it turns it into essentially an emergency beacon and feeds that location, assuming the signal's strong enough, into the dispatch center so they know exactly where you are instead of you trying to describe where you are.
In Verizon use, and I think they still do, I'm like for hurricanes specifically, where then Verizon lines, they have a priority for emergency personnel.
So Verizon Wireless actually provides connectivity for the Collier County Bureau of Emergency Services. So they are highly involved in providing connection in emergency situations.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with any questions?
One quick one. I'm assuming that for you to be here today, the HOA has authorized this and approved it.
Yes, sir. I wouldn't be here without the HOA's approval.
I would assume so, but I thought I should ask.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we have public comment.
We'll go to public comment. I have 6.
Those, please get to the podium to speak. If you have any comment, as a resident of Hunter Ridge, this is your opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry.
You want to hear
Mike,
from staff?
I'm cutting you off. I forgot the most important part.
I got all dressed up for you, Chairman.
That's a hint to be short.
I will be brief in my comments. I don't want to repeat myself. The applicant did a great job summarizing the request. Mike Fegon with Community Development for the record. I'm going to tackle this from a little bit of a different perspective. One of the things that we discussed when we met last was about specific criteria that is involved in staff making a recommendation. So that's more where my presentation is going to lie, is going over that criteria and how we got to the recommendation of approval. So there is going to be a little bit of a repetition here. Obviously, with the site location, we now have a better understanding of exactly where it is on the property within Hunter's Ridge. And the request itself, the staff is recommending approval for. We are recommending that to amend the schedule of uses to allow the 149-foot monopole, monopine wireless facility and the related infrastructure. And the list of exhibits and attachments is essentially what was utilized to make that decision from the staff perspective. So the legal description, the sketch, the overall site plan, all part of your packet, our background informational analysis that goes into that, the applicant's narrative, which was huge, obviously, in staff coming to that decision, the statement of need coming from the carriers about why a tower in this area would have a positive rate. The photo simulations were also huge. public comments, which are included in your packet as well. So just kind of going back in time a little bit, so Hunter's Ridge has been around for quite some time. It's one of the earlier, I'll say, more modernized developments within the city, one of the earlier planned developments, if you will. It goes back to 1985. It was approved by Lee County, and for this section, it was a rather narrow schedule of uses. Again, this is over 40 plus years ago. So recreational uses, model homes, the treatment plant, residential uses, some signs. They kept it pretty bare bones back in 85. So we are here for the PD amendment to add to the schedule of uses. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to cell towers is that cell towers are typically regulated under a different portion of your land development code. They have their own sections, they have their own design requirements, their own building requirements, some of which I've put into the staff report for you to get a feel for how we do cell tower allowable heights based on land uses. And typically, any tower that's over 35 feet requires a special exception. Special exception is another fancy way of saying a public hearing, similar to what we're doing here today. But the standards of review for a special exception and a PD amendment are different. And actually, the PD amendment has a higher level of review and a higher standard to meet than a special exception. What staff did was staff made them satisfy both. So they satisfied the special exception criteria and the PD amendment criteria. So when we go through your staff report and there's that table in there that lists out what the criteria are, that is a table that combines the special exception criteria and the PD amendment criteria, of which they were able to satisfy both. So we made them go through both standards. The coverage maps that Matt and I showed you before, I wanted to put them in here because I do think they speak volumes in terms of demonstrating the need. Demonstrating the need is one of the criteria in the cell tower portion of the code. So essentially you go through a checklist of, well, can you use an existing building to co-locate? Can you use an existing tower to co-locate? And you have to demonstrate that those items aren't going to be sufficient to cover the need. And it is only then can you start to sort of go down the path, if you will, at least with the city, of building a brand new tower structure. So I think these maps do a pretty good job of demonstrating the need in terms of what's out there existing versus the improvements that can be gained should the tower be permitted to be constructed. I think the fact that you have the tower already 50% leased and it's not even done going through the zoning process is also pretty demonstrative of the need for better service out in that area. Going back to the design, what you have on the left is a sample from the 41-page site plan that is Exhibit B in your application backup. And that's sort of the on-the-ground view, if you will, of what the tower is intended to look like. In terms of branch density, again, I don't want to use this picture and say this is as dense as it's going to get. Obviously, it's clear that the pole is visible all the way through. We're not saying that. When you do these types of civil drawings, you don't want to muddy it up too much because you want to make sure that all the labels are clear and that everything is visually clear. So you can see the branches, you can see where the cell canisters are going to be, you can see where the lightning rod is, you see where the fence is proposed. It keeps it from getting super busy. The photo simulation on the right is probably a bit more interpretive of what, or should I say indicative of what it's actually going to look like once constructed. This is another page of the site plan that again has all the labels, and I want to be clear based on, I know there was a question that I believe the chairman had asked earlier about the closest residence. Yes, Quail West is the closest, does contain the closest residence to the tower, but again with that you do have an existing landscape buffer for Hunter's Ridge, inside the wall, outside the wall, Bonita Grand Drive right-of-way, plus the Quail West landscape buffer, plus the Quail West wall, plus Lockheed Drive, then the home. There are residences within Hunter's Ridge that are going to be more visually impacted than the quote-unquote closest residence as shown on the map. But that is, again, one of the reasons why this goes through the public forum and is not a decision that's made administratively, is to understand that, yes, there will be visual impacts. They can only be mitigated to to such an extent in terms of the criteria of the code, but you should still be aware, and I'm sure you're going to hear some of that in the public comment here before you today. In terms of the environmental components, as you heard from Matt tonight, the site's already been impacted. It's already developed. It's already an existing maintenance facility and treatment area. So in terms of any need for additional environmental studying or things like that, it's not necessary for a site like this. We do have a condition put in place, though, that the applicant has agreed to, that if during the construction phase there is certain landscaping that is removed or damaged, that it is going to be replaced. In terms of stormwater, if they do make it through the zoning process and move on to the engineering permitting process, they will need to provide a stormwater management plan. They have been put on notice that they need to maintain historic flows in terms of stormwater and that they cannot increase runoff rates onto neighboring properties. The good news with cell tower construction is that because the infrastructure is so little and it doesn't take up a large swath of ground area, you don't have a lot of runoff risk associated with cell towers. In terms of traffic, you know, as you saw, there can be up to 4 carriers on the tower. If you read through the applicant's narrative, each carrier has approximately 1 maintenance trip per month. So that's what you're looking at in terms of intensity. They'd be using Fox Ridge Drive for access to the site. When they come in for their development order, their engineering permitting process, they would need to show the locations of where they're going to park the work vehicles, the construction materials, all those types of things. They're going to have to demonstrate that they're going to be maintaining suitable traffic flow up and down Fox Ridge Drive. So again, the idea is to, because the construction process is probably going to be the most arduous process of it all. Once the tower is up, you know, it's not a noise generator, it's not a traffic generator. There aren't going to be bright lights beaming off of it, anything like that. So it's really important that that the construction process is looked at in a lot of detail in terms of making sure that we can still provide suitable access and as much a sense of normalcy for Hunter's Ridge as we can. So if they do make it to the engineering stage, that is where those detailed conversations tend to occur. In terms of comprehensive plan consistency, it is in a moderate density mixed-use plan development, future land use category. There is no density associated with the request, a very low intensity overall. Again, perhaps 1 maintenance trip per month per carrier is what the traffic impact is expected to be. The roads are already built, it's fully constructed roadways, and again, it's a low traffic generator with a premium on maintaining flow during the construction process. The other elements of the comprehensive plan, staff looked through them, but we didn't feel they were applicable to the request. It's not in a conservation or coastal management area. The housing element wouldn't apply. There is no residential density associated. Recreation open space is more geared towards the city, making sure there's enough public parks and suitable open space for surrounding residents. Not really applicable here. Infrastructure in terms of sewer, water, again, not really applicable here. So the remaining elements weren't applicable to this particular request, but we did do a full-scale review of the comprehensive plan to make that determination. But the ones that are before you in terms of the transportation element and future land use are the ones that were utilized and presented in your staff report. So here we have the analysis table that's in your report as well, the plan development and the special exception analysis. So does it demonstrate compliance with the Bonita plan? Yes, it does. With the elements that make sense and that are applicable, yes, it does. Does it meet or exceed performance or location standards? Yes, it does. An example of that would be typically in the cell tower code, your leasable space needs to be 1.5 times the height of the tower. And that is because if the tower falls, it needs to be able to fall within the leasable area. The towers nowadays, they don't really collapse. They more collapse inward on themselves, almost like telescopic, if you will. So because of the new engineering that goes into the tower construction, the leasable area is allowed to be smaller. But that's an example of a performance and location standard that we're talking about in item 2 of your review criteria. Density and intensity consistent with the Bonita plan. There is no density. Very low intensity. Again, perhaps 1 maintenance trip a month per carrier. compatible with existing and planned uses in the surrounding area. This would be a more difficult one to say yes to if they were on a residential portion within Hunter's Ridge. Since they are on the maintenance facility, the treatment facility, and it's been that way since the 80s, we do feel it does meet that standard. That doesn't mean there is no visual impact to the surrounding residential areas, but that's where, for an example, they are proposing a monopine as opposed to just the metal wired tower, if you will. Will not place an undue burden on transportation infrastructure. We think it meets that one. Adverse impacts to environmentally sensitive areas or resources. There won't be any because there aren't any. Public facilities available. Yes, public facilities are available to the site. They don't need any deviations to accomplish this, so the last two review criteria are not applicable to the request overall. So again, that's the criteria that staff utilizes that's in your code to make these decisions. And with that, we do recommend approval of the amendment to allow the wireless facility to be added to the schedule of uses as conditioned in the staff report. And some of these conditions we'll go over really quickly. So it is tied to this specific strap number. There is no bait and switch where they can get this approval and then move it to a different site. If they choose to do that, they're coming back before you again. So it is tied to this specific location, the approval. And it should be generally consistent with the site plan that you have in your staff report back up there in terms of the overall design, the fencing, the locations, all those types of things. So the other thing is we are limiting it to just one facility. So it is not a blanket request now that is approved for Hunter's Ridge to start placing cell towers everywhere just because you've agreed to amend the schedule of uses. It is still limited to one facility overall. There is the landscaping condition that we talked about where if they do damage some of the existing landscaping during construction, they have to put it back at a like-for-like replacement. The applicant does need to obtain the local development order. That is the engineering permit and plans where we'll talk about the stormwater runoff, where we'll talk about the parking of work trucks and construction materials to make sure that it has as low impact as possible to the existing neighborhood. The other thing to keep in mind is this zoning approval is not intended to circumvent or supersede FAA regulations, FCC regulations, or Florida statutes. There are a lot of higher sovereigns in the state and in the country that have a say over cell tower and cell tower construction, sort of making sure that we're staying in our lane with this particular approval. So it really is just about adding it to the schedule of uses for an existing zoned property within the city. And again, approval of this zoning action, should you wish to approve and should council wish to approve, it does not guarantee that they will get local development order or building permit approval. So approving this does not circumvent the need for the applicant to go through those remaining processes. They still have to go through it. This is just the first step in the process. So with that, if you have questions or comments of staff or the applicant or turn to public comment, yes.
You mentioned that this, because Hunter's Ridge was approved many years ago as a development. For any new developments, will things like this be included in the approval process?
It's up to the developer specifically at that time. With every plan development application, they submit a schedule of uses, and they have to justify why they want that schedule. We have been seeing an uptick in PDs that are just outright requesting wireless facilities up front. And that's because, similar to what you heard today, there is a need for these types of facilities. So they're doing the legwork up front.
That's why I was asking, just how many times will we
Sure.
be in front for this?
Yeah, I think in the 13, 14 years I've been with the city, this is the second or third one that would have come before a board like this. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I had the same question, but thank you for that. But two additional things. One is not the guarantee, but on a going forward basis, the limiting it to 4 tenants on the tower. Is that deeded someplace or restricted somehow, or how is that monitored, that they don't come back at a later date and now they want to go to 6 or 8 or?
So that's going to be an example of something that's going to be covered by a higher sovereign, because what you would be permitting essentially is the tower construction, not the number of carriers. So you permit the construction, you can cap the height, but you can't cap the number of carriers that go on the tower. because that, again, that's one of the checklist items that we have in our code to essentially try and, I don't want to say prevent additional towers, but you need to demonstrate that you can't co-locate on something that's already existing. What I will say to your point, though, is that for a lot of these carriers to get adequate coverage, they need to be at a certain height on the tower. So the lower you go, the less coverage you're going to get. So essentially, it self-regulates.
But there aren't lesser uses that could continue to go down the tower and change the look of the tower, where it's not as attractive anymore?
I don't think there is any type of provision that could control that from a city standpoint. We can always say, listen, wherever you're going to start putting your branch line, we would prefer nothing to go below that. I don't think that's an enforceable condition outright, though. If they agree to it, great, but I don't think we can force it.
And the one other question is that also was brought up about the maintenance. Is that part of our review, and is that something that we do include, or should we add that to our, should there be an approval, should that be added to the approval?
If you would like that to become part of the conditions of approval, I can take a motion and a vote for that, and we can go ahead and add it to the conditions of approval. And between now and the first council meeting, we can work out the language of what that'll be. But that is within your purview to make that if you would like.
I think that would be wise.
Any other questions? Okay, now we are open. Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Public comment.
We have 6 registered speakers. When I call your name, please come forth to the lectern. Francie Morad, and she'll be followed by Don Huprich.
Good morning, board members. My name is Francie Morad. I live at 12737 Hunters Ridge Drive. I'm here to express my opposition to the proposed amendment that would allow a 149-foot monopole wireless tower within 375 feet of my home and our neighborhood. I understand that our HOA board supports this proposal because the community could receive financial benefits from leasing the property. I respect their perspective, but as a resident directly affected, I believe the long-term impact on property values, neighborhood character, and the well-being of residents must be carefully considered. First, property values and neighborhood character. A 150-foot industrial structure within 375 feet of existing homes is not compatible with the character of this residential area. Research shows that large towers near homes can reduce property values. Even modest reductions can mean tens of thousands of dollars lost per home, money that represents homeowners' equity and long-term investment. Second, the visual representations provided do not reflect the views residents actually experience. The images were straight-on shots. While our real views include ponds, trees, and open sky, in reality, a tower of this height would be visible across much of the neighborhood. Second, the visual representation, I said that. Third, there remains uncertainty about long-term health and environmental effects. While harm has not been conclusively proven, long-term safety has not been proven either. Families, children, elderly residents, and local wildlife should not be exposed to that uncertainty without careful consideration. In my backyard, I regularly see blue herons, eagles, otters, turkeys, and even bears and alligators. I also understand that our HOA will be discussing this issue with residents this week, and I hope that together we can explore whether alternative locations within the community might achieve the same goal while minimizing the impact on existing established homes. In closing, if the board determines that additional coverage is necessary, I respectfully ask that you deny this proposal at this site and encourage alternatives that protect established residential neighborhoods. Thank you for your time.
Don Huprich, and he'll be followed by Adriana Bonifer.
For the record, my name is Don Huprich. I am the general manager at Hunters Ridge. I've been associated with Hunters Ridge for over 35 years. First of all, I want to thank the staff for all their work, Jackie and Mike. I think they do a wonderful job, and I think the city is blessed with a wonderful staff. I am speaking really on the need of the tower. I think we all know that cell towers have limited capacity. And I think it's very clear from the necessity, the need for the cell tower for the safety of our residents and adjoining citizens in that area. I was on the site during Hurricane Irma in 2017, Hurricane Ian in 22, Helene in 24. And from a safety standpoint, it's very difficult for us to get any connections because the towers are already full of capacity. There is a need, and it's a need for the safety of our residents. So I am just really before you just asking for your recommendation to ask for approval for the additional amendment to the PD. Thank you.
Adriana Bonifer, and she'll be followed by Brad Wayman.
Good morning, Adrian Bonifer, and I live on 12741 Hunters Ridge Drive. I'm here to say that I am a big user and a supporter of cell phones and cell towers. However, I don't believe that the location of this particular tower is acceptable at all. We were not given the exact location for this tower during these discussions. I received a letter from your planning board, which I appreciated, and told me that it was going to be 375 feet from my home. I believe that there has to be a different place, a better place where you're not going to impact so many homes on Hunters Ridge property. We have land bordering 75, which you would not have to worry about trees or the height. I really think that we weren't given the right information, and many of my friends at Hunters Ridge had no idea that this tower was going to be placed where it is. And I'm not accusing anyone, I'm just saying it would be a real harm to us to have that built. Thank you so much. I hope you oppose it.
Brad Wayman, and he'll be followed by Kevin Keene.
My name is Brad Wayman, and I live in Hunters Ridge. I'm basically here to oppose the location for where this will be. Part of it is the potential physical abuse, which has been touched on with the radio frequency electromagnetic radiation. I know every study I can come out here with, if I come up with 5, there'll be 10 that say it's safe, it's, FM radio, whatever. But there still is the potential on the studies that are out there that things could not be right. The other one is the real estate values. It has been shown that a community that has a cell tower in it, on average, loses 2.5% of their property value. Communities that have cell phones visible lose, on average, 10% of their real estate value. With those type of points, I would hope that you would oppose this location. Once again, as has been stated, I'm absolutely for cell towers, maybe even in Hunters Ridge, but I just think this location, which happens to be close to my house also, is is not where it should be. Thank you.
Kevin Keene, and he'll be followed by Jack Wyland.
Hello, I'm Kevin Keene. I'm a resident, one of the very closest to the proposed location. Everything that has been said, I'm in agreement with those who oppose the location. I see this as a horrible eyesore. And frankly, if I were a buyer of my home, I wouldn't buy it if I saw that tower there. That is a way of saying the value of my property will drastically drop. I am concerned about the health, and I think we can find a better location, perhaps within the property. Thank you.
And the final registered speaker is Jack Wyland.
Morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I live on Fox Ridge Drive, which is one of the closer units to the tower. I am not opposed to a cell tower. I think we need it, and everything this young lady has told us is true. I was at the meeting on February the 5th, and I really doubt whether the majority of the people in Hunters Ridge appreciate this tower. I'm told that property evaluation, it decreases by 20% when you have a cell tower in the neighborhood. But I really believe that the foliage is something that is going to be a maintenance problem in the future. I mean, with the weather in Florida, it's going to be tough to to maintain it. 52 feet is nothing. There's nothing around there that's 52 feet tall to cover up that tower. I don't know. I think you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. It's an eyesore. So I'm opposed to the tower. Like I say, I think that there's a need for a tower somewhere, but why couldn't it be in a commercial area? So thank you for your time.
Are there any additional public comments? Any additional public speakers? And at this time, the applicant may address the public comments if she wishes.
All right, Matt and I, John again. So obviously there's a bit of a laundry list here, but there's a lot of repeating too. The first thing I want to bring you to is, and if we can switch back to my PowerPoint presentation. Actually, that's here. Got it. Never mind. I'm good. I'd like to remind you of the inherently local nature of cellular coverage. So, as you can see, your coverage, right, from the maintenance compound on Hunters Ridge, all right, goes a little bit to the west past the interstate, goes to the east to the edge of Palmyra. If you switch over to the west side, which, you know, still isn't as intensely used, right, you would end up shifting all that coverage that way, which means you're just going to prompt the need for additional towers to the east. Coming back to health and environmental, coming back to property values, and your city attorney can speak to this. There is extensive Florida case law and lay opinion testimony. Obviously, property values aren't really a driving factor of your analysis, but if you feel that it's necessary for you to reach a recommendation of approval, we can provide an expert property appraiser to come in and give an analysis based on facts instead of on thoughts and fears. And that's why lay opinion is not considered competent, substantial evidence for you to base the decision upon. The other thing that's not competent, substantial evidence is goes back to the concern about RF emissions. And that's actually why there's the Telecom Act of 1996. I need to put a copy of that into the record because my insurance carrier for malpractice would be upset at me if I did not do that. But basically what it says is that us as persons who deal in zoning and land use, we focus on zoning and land use things. And the FCC takes care of RF emission things. And decisions for zoning purposes cannot be based upon any perceived effects of RF emissions. And when you're listening to these objections, almost every one of the, 5 objectors out of 6 objectors out of 560 homes that are in Hunters Ridge. Homes, that's not the total people count. You know, almost all of them mentioned RF emissions, and I would respectfully submit that that's informing the other comments that they're saying, and the other comments are essentially RF emissions comments hiding in sheep's clothing. As far as getting the word out to Hunters Ridge residents, my first community meeting back in August was recorded, and I believe it was published on the website for Hunters Ridge. And I've had 2 community meetings. That's an unusual thing, but that is something that is required here in Bonita Springs. There was a statement that if you went to the west, you could somehow make the monopine lower. If you want, I can have an RF engineer come in here. We would have to continue, but you'd probably make it larger just to try to achieve that same coverage footprint. Because again, that goes back to what I was telling you about the whole coverage footprint shifting. As far as maintenance goes, a monopine, I'm sure Mr. Lee, my project manager, would agree that a monopine is a headache for him at Diamond because he has to maintain it. He has to stay on top of a maintenance schedule. A monopine is a maintenance commitment by the communication tower company to the area that they are coming into to be a good neighbor. So with that, I would bring you back to the coverage, the existing need. I would bring you back to the fact that you have 2 carriers that have service gaps that they're trying to solve to serve the public. I would bring you to your staff's expert analysis, and of course we adopt that into I adopt that into my application and all of their conditions of approval, including the proffered one, the suggested one for maintenance. And I would respectfully request that you recommend approval of the monopine. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
The site that was identified, was that done by the HOA board? How was that site determined specifically? Location for the tower?
If I may bring up Cameron Lee, project manager with Diamond Communications. He can discuss that further because he was involved in the leasing process. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, board. Cameron Lee, Diamond Communications LLC, 75 Northwest 1st Avenue, Delray Beach, Florida, 33344. So in respect to your question, I began the lease negotiations with the Hunter Ridge Community Association back in early 2024. That entailed multiple site visits to the property in which myself and the general manager and other members of the board walked around the property, looked at viable spots, and ultimately it was chosen that the maintenance facility was the best possible spot within the community that wouldn't impact golf course operations, wetlands, things of that nature. I do want to bring up that I did hold basically a town hall with the residents when I was coming to them for the proposal of the lease agreement. That was back in April 23rd of 2024, in which I want to say over 100 plus residents did attend, and we did propose the location and the exact spot is being proposed to you today.
Thank you.
I have a question with that. Did Hunters Ridge engage you guys for cell tower, or did you engage them first?
We engaged them, and the reason why is because the carrier came to us directly. What they typically do is they issue us a search ring, meaning a search radius to which they're looking to solve their coverage. Within that almost entire search ring was the Hunters Ridge community, in which they were practically the sole landlord that would basically have property within the carrier search ring.
And when a carrier does that, is that based off of customer complaint or just self-knowledge? Or
Correct. It's really a mix of exactly that. The customer complaints, their surrounding network, existing coverage as of today.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just if I may elaborate on that a little bit. What's not shown in our RF package is capacity charting. That's partly how the carriers determine whether they need additional towers in the area. And then the other side of that equation is metrics that come back from the phones and devices, because they're always reporting back to the towers, hey, I was able to make a connection with you, but just barely, or it was strong.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. Hearing none, the presentations have been presented, both by the city and also on the part of the applicant. So at this time, it's an appropriate request for a motion to be forwarded.
Can I ask one thing?
Go
Based
right
off
ahead.
of what, when you asked about the maintenance, having that be subject to,
I think whatever motion, if there was a motion to
Yeah,
approve.
to include that? Okay.
Absolutely,
think, yeah.
yes. So is there a motion? All right, I'll have to create one.
I'll-
Oh, go ahead.
Being that this is this is our first zoning application, which is a quasi-application, quasi-judicial application, based on all of the information that we've received, and from our professionals, I would make a motion to grant, the amendment to the PD, with the addition of a continuing maintenance aspect reviewed by our planning officials.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll ask the city clerk to read the roll.
Member Brown,
Yes.
Member Doogie,
Yes.
Member Lombardo, Chairman Hershenson,
Yes.
Member Lowen,
Yes.
Member Townsend. Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. The next item on the agenda, those of you who wish to leave, you can. Go right ahead. Yeah, you can stay. We'll just take a moment while the room clears out. Okay, the next order of business is be proper to elect a vice chair for the board in case of the chairman's absence or illness. And I would like to put into a nomination the name of Ray Townsend to be the vice chair. Is there a second to that nomination?
Second that.
Second by Bob. Are there any other nominations? All right, all those in favor of putting Ray in as the vice chair, please say, again, the roll call, please.
Chairman Hershenson,
Yes.
Member Lombardo,
Yes.
Member Lohan,
Yes.
Member Townsend.
Is that a conflict for voting for myself or not?
No, it's not.
Yes.
Member Doogie.
Yes.
Member Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Congratulations, I think.
Choice.
All right, the next item is the approval of minutes from the training workshop that were held on March 5. I make a motion that with those minutes be approved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded. Any discussion on the motion? The clerk will read the roll.
Chairman Hershenson,
Yes.
Member Lohan,
Yes.
Member Townsend,
Yes.
Member Lombardo,
Yes.
Member Brown, Member Doogie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Any good and welfare? All right, well, thank you very much. We all survived it, especially me. And at this point, I will announce the next meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. on April 14, 2026, and the meeting is adjourned.
Nice job, everybody.